Show you how to map out the face. Those of you who have been here before know the process. I'll map out the face, and then after that I'm going to show you how to paint a realistic eye. Oh, sure, move whatever you want. If anything that's in the way. If anybody on that side of the room can't see something, if there's a painting in the way, just let us know. And the club is celebrating a 75th year. In January, we're going to have a celebration. So watch for that news. And after the demo, or if we take a break, you can take a walk back there and see there's hundreds of paintings from our club members. And if you would like to join the club, there's information on the welcome table there. And Claire Thibault will be happy to help you and answer any questions you might have. I'm the club secretary, and I also run the art center along with Ann Emery and Kathy Costa, wherever they are. And without further ado, I'm going to get started because I'm finding an hour really isn't long enough to get a portrait done and to convey everything that I want to tell you. So this is my palette. And I like to label some of the colors, especially if the lighting isn't good, so that I don't pick up the wrong color. This my husband made for me, and it goes in this box. If some of you who do watercolor would be familiar, it looks like a watercolor box with a cover on it. And I think I showed you this last time, but some of you are new. So this is an ice cube tray, and it makes a very wonderful paintbrush holder. And without further ado, I'm going to start mapping out the face. And I'll tell you more about the paints once I get into the painting. Now, mapping out the face, when you're doing a portrait straight on, you start with the oval of the face, which this is not a perfect oval, and the eyes are usually right in the center. Believe it or not, unless Indians, their skulls or their foreheads are a little shorter, so their eye orbit sits a little higher in their skulls. But most people, the eyes are right in the middle, and you usually can fit one eye in between the other two. And the nose will be halfway down in between the center of the eye and the chin, and the mouth will be halfway down from that. And then this is the orbit of the eye, and this would be about the size of the eyeball right here. So when you put a very light line, I'm doing dark lines so that you can see it. You always start your portrait with very light lines if you're drawing in pencil, very light lines so that you can erase them. But to get it mapped out, you need to do this exercise. So the actual eyeball would be about half the size of the opening in the skull, the orbit. So that's the eyeball, and then you would put the almond shape for the eyes, and an eyeball, say, looking straight ahead, and the nose maybe a little downturn, and the mouth, if you just do an oval with a little divot in the middle, you almost have your whole mouth. So very simple to map out the face. And if you've done it light enough, you can start penciling in a little darker the real shape of the eye, with the eyeball and the lid. And very soon, and the ear is usually about like this, and very soon you'll have a face mapped out. So that's just very basic. People who are just beginning portraiture should know about portraits. The profile portraits are much easier than full face, or as I'm going to be doing today, 3/4. Tania and the rest of the models we're all 3/4. Now, just move this way just a little. And that's what I would consider 3/4. And to do a 3/4, to map it out, again, if you're a beginner, map it out like this. She's looking down, it would be like this. And then your eyes would be like this. This would be a little smaller. But you can see that you can use this almost for any position. And now I'm going to show you how to make a realistic eye. I'm going to move real fast so that we'll have more time for the oil painting. Now I'm going to start with my little tin cups. I have linseed oil and turpentine. I'm going to start with a little turpentine just to draw the eye. Turpentine and a little raw umber. This will allow the paint to dry fast so I could paint over it, because this is only to draw with. Now this is just regular canvas. It's comes on a roll. It's primed, but it will soak up the turpentine and it'll dry fast. So I'm not going to do the exercise with the eye orbit and the eyeball, because I've done so many eyes I can do the shape with my eyes closed. So I'm just going to do the shape of the eye. And I'm going to show you how to make a realistic eye. If you get the eye right, you can be forgiven if the nose comes out a little off, crooked, or the mouth isn't quite wonderful. But if you get the eye right, that's half your battle. Now there's the eyeball. The eyeball might be a little big. I cut that one down a little bit. And there's the pupil. This off. Now I'm not going to be cleaning my brush as much as I usually do when I'm doing a portrait, because this is just going to be a very fast exercise. Now I'm just going to throw some white where the white of the eyeball is, just to get started. I think I don't want to contaminate that palette. I'll use this little one. And you'll see this start to come to life pretty quickly. Now the white of the eye is never really white. It's always an off color. I'm going to use a little raw umber to tone that white down. And it's a little better than a gray. It gives it a little bit of color. Raw umber added to almost any color will calm it down. If your blue is too bright, or your orange is too orange, or your red is too red, or your green is too green, raw umber will calm it down. It's a good color to use when you're doing oceans, because it's hard to get a real calm color when doing water. And the raw umber will calm it right down for you. Now I'm going to add a little more white here. Clean this up a bit. Oops. A little more white here. There's always a little shadow underneath the upper lid. Can't forget the shadow. I'm going to use a little lavender for under that shadow. Now that's a little bright. I'll tone that down with a little orange. Don't be afraid of color. Color is what painting is all about. If you're afraid of color, you might as well draw with pencil. Now just blend everything in real nice. And a lot of brush strokes on this. And the way to get rid of brush strokes, let's see if I have the right, I don't have my other fan brush. Fan brush is great for getting rid of brush strokes. I don't have my favorite fan brush with me. See how that smooths it out so pretty? I don't know if you could see that from the audience, but just smooths that color out so nice. I'll take a little more umber, and let's get the, it's a little dry, so I'm going to put a little oil on it. You only need a little bit of linseed oil. If your paint's getting sticky, just dip your brush in a little linseed oil. But just be aware that that means your painting is going to take longer to dry. The linseed oil extends the life of the drying time of your work, your painting. And some paints dry out and get chalky sooner than others. And Raw umber is one of them. Now the principle I want to tell you about is the light that hits an eyeball. And if you take nothing else away from this demonstration, you remember this, and you'll always remember how to do a realistic eye. And especially in oil. Oil transfers so wonderful to light. And it's so easy to get soft edges with it. And you can wipe it off. You can take a little turpentine, if I wanted more off there. See how easily it is to take off? It's very forgivable. The big downside to oil is if you mix too many colors all at once, it gets muddy and chalky and not pretty at all. It loses all its luster. The more spontaneous you can get with it, ooh, I got it all over myself. The more spontaneous you can get, the better off you are. If you torture yourself with a number 2 brush over every little detail and rub each color into the next, it'll never be vibrant and beautiful the way oil paint is made to be. Now I'm going to put a little black in the center of the eye for the pupil. Now the pupil is just a hole in the eye. You know, all the information goes through the pupil that you see in the world around us, and that's how your brain makes sense of everything. By going through this hole, and the iris is almost like a cone shape going in with a clear covering on the outside. Now, I'm not an ophthalmologist, but I know a little bit about this from painting it. But what happens is, say a light is at 1 o'clock. I always like to use the clock when I'm dealing with direct light on a subject, and I usually want direct light on something that I'm painting. If it's outdoors or a portrait or a still life, I like one light coming from one direction. Unfortunately here we've got ambient light coming from all over the place. So yes, 3 there, 20 here. And if I were to take a close look at Tania's eyes, I bet there's 10 or more little beads of light in her eye. But for demonstration purposes, I'm gonna make believe there's only one spot of light. And that spot of light is going to be at 1 o'clock, and I'm going to put a little dash of white right here. I'm not sure if it's going to, I might have to wipe some of it off here just to get a nice little dash of white. And usually in a formal portrait, I'll put another dash too. In a formal portrait, I will mix the white with a smidgen of yellow. For some reason, it makes it more opaque and more brilliant no matter what color it's next to. Now there's where my light is coming from, someplace around 1 o'clock with a little ambient light right there. So down here, opposite 1 o'clock, it's going to go through the liquid of the eye, over the pupil, and hit the other side of the iris. And once it hits the other side of the iris, you can't be afraid of color. You have to take a chance, especially with oils. The colors are so beautiful. Take a chance and try a different color at the bottom. Now I'm putting a little orange down there. See, the brown is a little dead. Brown is a dead color, just like black is a dead color and white is a dead color. White is kind of a dead color until you add a color to it. But now I'm going to add a little red to that brown, and you're going to see this eyeball start to come to life just by adding a little red. And I'll bring it over to this glow over here a little bit more, make it a little more realistic. You know, it takes a little coaxing to, in portraits, to get it to look realistic, come to life, and look better than a portrait. That's your goal in doing a portrait painting. You don't want it to look like a photograph, because then you might as well have a photograph. But if you make it pop, make it more colorful and more interesting, and you could do that with almost every element of the portrait if you take enough time, don't be afraid of color, experiment. I mean, it's only paint and canvas. It's not life and death. So don't be afraid to take a chance. Now see, it's already starting to come alive, that red. Red excites me, red and orange. I love red and orange. And then if you add a little green in here, that makes it exciting too. And I've discovered that phthalo green, which those of you who do paint are scared to death of any of the phthalos, because you get them on, you can't get it off, and you can't change that color. But I'm finding the attributes to phthalo green and phthalo blue. And especially if you mix them a little bit with, oh, look at that green. Can you see that green from there? I mean, it really makes it come to life. You can't see it. You'll see the eye after. But don't be afraid of the color. I'm even putting a little under here, and it looks great. Now, I'm going to add a little more white to this, and to the eyeball. I want to see a little more life in it. Oh, I must have picked up the black right next to it. Got to get that baby out. I'll take a fresh brush because now that's contaminated. I like to put my white next to my black because they seem like they're so nice and opposite. I never use them together, but once in a while I pick up the black by mistake. But see how that eye looks like it's really looking at you? And once you put the eyelid on, I mean, this is just an eyeball by itself, and I think it looks pretty darn good. And once, I may say so myself, once you put the eyelash on, now this canvas is sucking up all the oil in the paint. So, but the one that I'm going to be using for the portrait, I've already primed, so I won't have this problem. But once you put a little eyelid on and a little bit of the canthus right here, with a little bit of highlight, see, it's starting to come to life already. So there's your eye, and I'm seeing that it is already 20 after. I want to get the portrait started. But if I had time to put the skin tone next to that, it would tone this eye down. It looks kind of grayish, but that's a realistic eye, believe it or not. That's the way you paint an eye. And there is the, don't forget, the bottom lid too. Right here. See, with each stroke you do, it gets better and better and more realistic. That's what's exciting about painting, especially portraiture. Portraiture can be very painful for hours and hours. And then all of a sudden, it starts to come alive. It's almost like you gave birth. That was a painting I did right here of Patty Goins. Patty, you want to stand up and let them see that it really looks like you? That was acrylic, and I was swearing at you a lot over the weekend. Yeah, it was not coming out good. And it was to the stage where I thought, oh, damn, I can't bring this there. This looks terrible. It was in really bad shape. But it was like the last 20 minutes. And my husband would come in the studio and say, how you doing, hon? And I'd say, not good. I don't think I'm going to bring this. And the last 20 minutes, it started to come together. But she does have an extra tooth that I didn't see in the picture. I just couldn't. That was it. I wasn't going to eliminate the tooth. So anyways, there's the eye. And at the end of the session, I'll take all the, wow. Let's see, I better, oh, see? Wow. See? Yeah. Big eye. At the end of the session, I'm going to show you all the paintings I did the 6 weeks. And of course, you know, when I left here at 4 o'clock or so, they didn't look like what they look like now. I went home and worked on them over the weekend. So you can't do portraits in an hour, but I can show you a few tips and tricks to get you started and get you inspired. So without any more delay, I'm going to get to painting Tania. Can't wait. Now this is just primed canvas. It's by the roll, so I have it on a masonite board. Just acrylic paint. This one I mixed in gray, orange, green, and a little black. I seem to never do it the same each time. I always change my mind. ADD. Well, I like experimenting. You know, I don't really have a formula. If there really was a formula, I wouldn't need to show you how to do it because you could just read a book and get the formula, but there really is no formula. You have to develop your own style, take classes, you know, and just because somebody teaches you one way doesn't mean it's the right way. There is no right way with art. It's whatever you experiment with. And I have experimented over the weekend, and I'm going to try this with this portrait with using phthalo green. I usually use sap green on the shadows, but trying something new. So probably shouldn't do it when I'm doing a demo, but it should be very exciting. You'll be the first one to see my big poof. Now I'm going to start drawing Tania with...
Those colors you just mentioned in the background there, are those to pick up her skin tone? She's got that lovely skin tone.
Not necessarily. It's just to cover the white canvas because the tooth of the canvas, the weave of the canvas shows through so easily. On some colors are a little more translucent than others. This is why if there's a little skip, you won't even see it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Judy, what do you think? What is
This is rolled canvas. It was primed white, and I primed it again with acrylic paint. With you know, just what I just squeezed some tubes on and slapped it on. Nothing sophisticated. No mystery. Oop, I don't want the oil. I want the turp. So now I'm going to use turp and raw umber. We'll wait till we're a little farther along things. Okay, now I'm going to put a little turp in here and get it nice and loose. So this will be drying while I'm painting it.
you want me to look at you, but my face this way?
Oh, yeah.
I need to fix on something.
Fix on something, you know, the clock or something. And then once you fix on the clock, then you look at me. You know what? I think your head has to be turned a little bit like that.
Fix on Abe Lincoln back there. Is that too low?
I don't know where Abe Lincoln is. Well, that's good. I like that one.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Okay, first you have to think of negative space. How much negative space? Now, I'm thinking I had trouble with Patty's because I wanted to get that beautiful scarf on that she had. And I put her head up a little high, and then I had a hard time stretching it around a stretcher bar. But I have to paint her big enough so that you can see in the back what I'm doing. So maybe I'll come down here. This will be the top of your head, and maybe this will be your chin. This way, at least I have the size of, you know, her head. I might have to go down a little farther because the audience won't be able to see good enough. So there's the top of your head, and your eyes would be about in the middle. There's the eyes about there. Now I'm going to just basically do the shape of the head. Now this by no means is correct, but I've got to have something to start with. And I love drawing with a brush. It's just so freeing. You know, you draw with a little pencil, it's so tight. But I like drawing with a pencil too. I like it all. And those who have been in the audience these 6 weeks know I do like it all. It's so much fun. And the better you get at this, the more fun it is, because the less mystery. There's still always going to be mystery, but you've unlocked some of it. The more you paint, the more you learn. You'll learn more by painting. Just get to the easel and get to painting. You'll learn more that way than you will from a class. I'm not telling you not to take classes, but you really have to, like any job, you have to do it to learn it. Somebody could teach you all kinds of book learning, but when you go to practice, just like if you go to school, if you go to college, do they really prepare you for the real world? No. Do they prepare you for bad bosses? No. Do they prepare you for bad relationships? No. So right now you look like a pretty ugly man. So I got to tell you. But you won't look like that forever. You might look like that in about 40 years, but not now.
I'll try not to laugh. Move my head.
Let's see. Okay, I'm going to do a little more shadows. Now I've got her face way too fat. So I'm going to do a little background here to reduce. Otherwise, it gets in the way of your spatial relationships, that big fat line. So let's see. I always feel like such an artist with a palette in my hand and the.
You are.
Yes. I remember the first time I had a palette in my hand, I thought I was such an artist. It was at a workshop. It's the first time I had oil paints, and I was holding it like this. And at the end of the class, my whole boob was filled with paint. And so was my arm going all the way up my shoulder. It was so funny. Brought me down a little bit. But it does feel good having a palette in your hand and a model. We need to do more of this in the club. Of course, we have enough members with everybody a model for us. Most of my models have been members. And my models get to keep their painting, but they don't get it for a little while. I got to finish it. So.
I do nude modeling.
I bring a drape. Though I do like painting nudes. It is usually when they have classes like that, it's almost like speed painting. You have 5 minutes in which to capture somebody, and I found that strange, but I guess that's the way most of them do. And then by the time you're given 15 minutes to draw or paint somebody, it's such a luxury. And all right, this is pretty bad, but it'll get better. I have to have faith.
I have complete faith.
Yeah. Let's see what happens when I'm home with this, trying to capture you. All right, that's I got some shadows, which is what I wanted.